And I call the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It gives me great pleasure this evening to rise to speak on the appropriation bills for 2018 and 2019. I'd like to start off on the subject of university funding and the recent case of Professor, or now Dr. Ridd. I'll start with the comments about what John Stuart Mill wrote back in the year 1869 in On Liberty. I quote from his work: "The particular evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race, posterity as well as the existing generation, those who dissent from the opinion, still more than those who hold it. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. If it is wrong, they lose what is almost a great benefit: the clearer perception and livelier impression of the truth produced by its collision with error." It is that belief is the reason why we fund our universities with taxpayers' dollars, so that they are the bastions of free speech, places where free and open debate are welcome, where they become places that dissenting opinions are welcome, not frowned upon, where alternate views and theories are listened to and tested. The idea of gagging scientists, of silencing academics from criticising their university, of having intolerance for different views, where dissent must be crushed rather than encouraged, is a perversion of those words of Mill's. It is a perversion of the legacy of the Enlightenment. That is how totalitarian regimes develop and work. And yet, Deputy Speaker, we have the treatment of James Cook University of Professor Ridd. Firstly, they tried to punish the professor for simply daring to question the sacred peer review. And these are the words that they objected to, which Professor Ridd said. I quote Professor Ridd's words: "We can no longer trust scientific organisations like the Australian Institute of Marine Science, even things like the ARC Centre of Excellence for Coral Reef Studies. A lot of this stuff is coming out, the science is coming out, but it is not properly checked, tested or replicated. And this is a great shame, because we really need to be able to trust our scientific institutions, and the fact is, I do not think we can anymore." Professor Rudd is merely voicing an alternate opinion. His opinion should be tested against the facts, with different hypotheses tested over and over. That is how the scientific method works. But yet, because of those words, there was a campaign not only to curtail Professor Rudd's academic freedom, but they actually made an order to James Cook University that he should not even discuss their campaign to silence and censor him. And this has gone to the length of absurdities. He was even told not to contact or speak with his wife about the case. He was told he could not trivialise, satirise or parody James Cook University. And that is what they've accused him of. No, read that. They've actually accused him of trivialising, satirising and parody because he sent a newspaper article about his case to an old friend, merely copied the article and wrote the words, "for your amusement." For that, we have a university trying to censor a professor. But we know what Professor Ridd's real crime was. His real crime was that he dared to question leftist groupthink ideology. An ideology that says a totalitarian mindset that dissenters must be crushed. So I say to those running James Cook University, your targeting, your seeking to silence Professor Ridd are an affront to everything our universities stand for. They are an affront to the very principles of Western civilisation, to the legacy of enlightenment, and to our democracy. This is why, when John Stuart Mill used the word evil, he said the particular evil of silencing the expression of opinion is something that we should avoid. I ask those running James Cook University to look at themselves closely, to look at the history of the Enlightenment, and to allow Professor Ridd to continue his work. And if his work is wrong, prove it with the science and the evidence. A few other issues I'd like to address, Deputy Speaker, during this debate is firstly what we saw, the contrast between the coalition and between the Labor Party during the budget and budget reply speech. We heard the opposition leader commit on the budget in reply night that he would commit the Labor Party to copying the South Australian experiment, the failed South Australian experiment of a 50% renewable energy target, inflicted upon those poor, long-suffering residents of South Australia, where they were turned into guinea pigs for that experiment. And what did that experiment deliver? The very experiment that the Leader of the Opposition wants to foist upon the entire nation. It gave that state not only the highest electricity prices in the nation, but unbelievably, it gave that state the highest electricity prices in the world. And that is what the Leader of the Opposition wants to copy and inflict upon the nation. The Labor Party talk about the greater happiness for the mass of the people. Well, what that 50% renewable energy target did, it resulted in South Australia having the highest rate of disconnections in the nation. In fact, they went 130% increase in disconnections. In 2009-10, in the state of South Australia, there were 4,748 disconnections, people having the electricity turned off. Fast forward, once they've implemented the wonderful policy of a 50% renewable energy target, in 2016-17, there were 10,902 households in South Australia that had the electricity disconnected, 130% increase. And that is what the Labor Party wants to inflict on all of Australia. How does a family operate if they've had their electricity disconnected? How do their kids do their homework at night? How do they cook at the evening meal? How do they keep food fresh in a refrigerator if they have no electricity, if it's been cut off? And yet the policies of the Australian Labor Party are to introduce and copy the very policies that saw a 130% increase in the state of South Australia having electricity cut off. Deputy Speaker, we also have seen of what it has done. The average debt from the Australian Energy Regulator, while the average electricity bill debt in Queensland is $650 and New South Wales $850, in the state of South Australia it is $1,200, almost 50% higher. So what that means that residents in South Australia have less money in their pocket to spend on all the services, to spend on the local shops or the local cafe, or to buy something extra for their kids, or something nice, or to save money for a holiday because they have to put more money aside for electricity. We are talking about a $550 difference between Queensland and between South Australia in the extra that they have to pay their bill. And yet this is the policy that the Labor Party want to inflict on all of Australia. It doesn't stop there, Deputy Speaker. We also have seen the Labor Party commit to upping the Paris targets. They think the Paris targets that we have committed to are not high enough. They want to up it to a 45% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. So I'd ask the members of the Labor Party, we know what your plans are for electricity. We know how your plans will see. We know exactly what happens. We have the example of the state of South Australia. But can you tell us how are you going to get a 45% reduction in emissions in the transport sector? Are you going to put up the price of petrol? Are you going to put up the price of registration? Are you going to take cars off people? Explain to the Australian public how you are going to get a 45% reduction in transport. Agriculture, Deputy Speaker. How are the Labor Party going to get a 45% reduction in emissions in the agricultural sector? What do they have planned for the farmers of this nation if they force upon them a 45% reduction? What about industry, Deputy Speaker? Industry that uses gas. How are they going to get a 45% reduction there? Quite simply, well, close the businesses down, put the workers out of work and send the to get a 45% reduction in the emissions that people use gas for their home heating. Do you expect people to sit shivering in the cold so we can achieve some sort of virtue signalling, so you can run around and say, yes, we've achieved our targets? This is what the Australian people need to know, Deputy Speaker. This is what they need to explain their policies. What they're doing, we know the electricity sector, we know the damage that they are going to cause, but tell us, what are your policies on transport to get those reductions? What are your policies on agriculture? What are your policies for industry? And what are your policies for gas home heating? Finally, Deputy Speaker, this is where we see the greatest difference between the coalition and the opposition. We see the difference in speech after speech in this chamber. Members of the Labor Party simply think the size of our economic pie is fixed. They think the wealth that we've created just arrives naturally, and it's just a matter of carving it up in what they see as fair and equitable. This is a mistake, Deputy Speaker, that we have seen from nation after nation that has sent their country backwards. Because the size of the economy is not fixed. The wealth that we have in this nation depends on the hard work and the entrepreneurial efforts and the risk-taking of the Australian citizen. That's why, Deputy Speaker, we think that it is best policy to lower the corporate rate of tax. Because we know that we need to have that corporate rate of tax internationally competitive. How longer can we continue with a 30% corporate tax rate, stuck at that level since the year 2000, if we see all our international competitors lowering their corporate rate of tax? We see the US bringing that back to 21%. We see the UK bringing it back to 19%. We see Hong Kong and Singapore at 15 and 17%. How can we attract that investment if we are going to have a 30% corporate tax rate plus a top marginal rate of tax of 49%? It's where every 50% of every extra dollar that someone earns goes to the government. These are the destroyers of the incentives that create the wealth in our nation. Deputy Speaker, there cannot be a greater clarity between what the opposition plans for this nation and what the coalition does. We see the plans of the opposition. They will give us uncompetitive energy prices. They will copy South Australia, give us the highest in the world. They will make our transport unaffordable for many Australians. They will make our corporate rate of tax uncompetitive. And if we have those things uncompetitive, how can we in this nation therefore afford to pay the wages that we'd like to see? How can we increase people's wages if more and more of every business's expense has to go to a higher and higher electricity bill to meet some artificial target, so the Labor Party can go around in their electorates and virtue signal to the Greens to try and get their preferences? This is the choice that is coming, Deputy Speaker, and it is a stark choice. It is about a coalition government acting responsibly, bringing the budget back to a surplus, back to a balance, then to a surplus, and then start paying down that debt as coalition governments have done and succeeded before. Yet the alternate, Deputy Speaker, is a reckless Labor Party that will spend and spend money that we don't have and make our nation uncompetitive and destroy wealth.
The member's time has expired.